Morning, church. Hey, it's good to see you. If you're a guest this morning, we're super glad that you're here to worship and celebrate Jesus with us. A couple weeks ago, we kicked off this series asking this question, why do you do that? The whole idea behind this series is recognizing that in the church there are multiple generations. In this room right now, there are multiple generations. And we together make up this church. We talked about how in Titus chapter 2, just to recap to get us all on the same page. In Titus chapter 2, Paul writes this letter to Titus, a younger early church leader. And he says, hey, in order for the church to work as it's supposed to work, there's responsibilities for everybody. He writes and he says, older men, this is your responsibility, and younger men, this is your responsibility. And he says, older women, this is your responsibility, and younger women, this is your responsibility. He says, everybody plays a part. We all have this part to play. And so, for the past month or so, what we've been doing is we've been asking some of our senior adults some questions. Asking, well, why is it you do things this way? Because some of it is different from maybe some in younger generations. Because really, we've been working at living out Paul's words to Titus. To learn from one another, to gain wisdom from one another. But we've asked questions of why do you go to church every week? But we asked the question, why do you pray so hard? Last week we asked this question and had a conversation about, why do you stay married so long? What is it that pushed you through the difficult times? But this morning we're going to have just a very candid conversation. A conversation that in a lot of churches is destroying churches and splitting them into pieces. A conversation that too many churches are unwilling to have, and the result of it is dying churches instead of growing churches. See, this past week, a question that I asked some of our senior adults as a kind of youngish 30-something-year-old is, why do you put up with us? Like, why do you put up with us? Why, when you've seen so much change, and when you see things, see people doing different things, and there's young people that come into the church and have different ideas, and what is it that keeps you around? What is it that keeps you faithfully committed to what God is doing here? Why do you put up with this? And as I asked this question, and I watched the different responses come in, there was one common trait between every single answer. And it wasn't a surprise, because I see it in all of their lives as well. And the answer was Jesus. I'm going to pray. God, I'm so thankful this morning. I'm thankful for your church. God, I'm thankful for this unique opportunity and all the busyness of life and everything that we've got going, this community of people that we have. And Father, I pray that we not miss it. I pray that we not take it for granted. God, I pray that we can be an encouragement to one another in the room. God, I pray that we can be strength for someone else in the room when they desperately need it. God, I'm thankful that this morning when we walked in here, that some of us came in and we were tired, and some of us came in and were broken, and some of us came in and were filled with stress, and some of us came in just going through the standing each day. God, some of us came in and were filled with joy. But God, no matter how we walk in, Father, I pray that your Spirit meets us here, and that it will move, and it will challenge us. That I pray that you will remind us of our place and our purpose in this community. That Jesus, I'm thankful that because of your cross and the forgiveness that you give us, as a room full of sinful people, we can meet here this morning with hope. Jesus, we're thankful for your love and grace. Amen. Their names were Stan and Verna Mensch. They were an older couple in the church that I grew up in. Part of the reason I remember their name is because as a middle school, high school student, every week, Stan would find me someplace around the church, and he would ask me questions. Growing up in Buffalo, hockey is just a part of culture, and so he would always find me, and he would ask me, and he would say, Matt, how about those Buffalo Sabres, which is the professional hockey team up there? And we would then engage in a conversation about hockey and the previous week's games, or what was happening in the off season or something like that. Stan did not have to do that. He was as old as my grandpa, and here he is finding me someplace around the church to ask me about hockey. Inevitably, the same Sunday, almost every week, his wife, Verna, she was probably one of the sweetest, most encouraging ladies I've ever met. She would, every Sunday, find a point in some part of the service to walk over to the couple rows where the high school, junior high students were sitting, and she would ask us about our name. She would ask us about our week. She would ask us about school. And every week I knew that they were going to find us and they were going to ask us these questions because they cared. It wasn't just occupying the same space on Sunday morning. It was that they actually cared about how our week was going. They cared to have a conversation with us. You see, when it comes to the church and working together as different generations, there has to be a care for one another. Even though we see things different, and even though we understand things different, even though we look at Jesus a little bit different, there has to be a care for one another. Part of getting ready for this week, other than asking some of our senior adults why they put up with us, I pulled up Google, and I started typing the phrase, "the church changes through." And I was getting ready to type generations. And you know how Google just auto-populates like the most searched thing when you start that phrase? It pulled that up. Ever want to guess what the number one answer is on how you would finish that sentence? The church changes through. You're never going to guess it because I was astonished. And I don't know who's preaching these sermons, but it's not going to be me today. The number one response on Google, the church changes through puberty. That's not me. That's a different topic for a different time. All right, but we're not preaching that sermon today. All right. But when we look at the generational makeup, it changes one of those things that is difficult. If we're honest about it, changes one of those things that is hard. But when generations come and have to work together. One of the responses I got this past week probably summed it up the best. I thought about having this guy preach, but then I didn't. But he said this. He said the main reason that we stay and are part of the church is that the church is still teaching what the Bible says and the teaching of Jesus. As some of us get older, we need to step aside to get the younger people involved. It was refreshing to see so many younger faces putting on the Thanksgiving dinner. It changes what it takes to get younger folks in the door, then so be it. They can't learn what the Bible says and what Jesus taught if they aren't here. I thought, that's it. And it's hard and it's difficult and sometimes it takes difficult steps. And so I started to think to myself, where is it that we see this playing out in the Bible? Where is it that we see Jesus encounter generations, different generations, and something incredible happens? I thought of Jesus sitting on a hillside with a whole giant crowd of people in John chapter 6. And if you have a Bible or a turn there, you're welcome to. Otherwise, on the screen. Look it up on your phone. John chapter 6. A story that many of us probably have heard before or heard mention of before. And Jesus is with this large crowd of people, and they're starting to get hungry. And what we see unfold after that is incredible. In John chapter 6, we're going to begin reading in verse 5. It says, when Jesus looked up and saw a crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where should we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him. He already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." That there was plenty of grass in that place, that they sat down where about 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves and gave thanks and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same for fish. But when they had all had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who has come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountainside by himself. So here we have this miraculous Jesus moment where this giant crowd of people received a meal. But I want to back up a couple of steps. And while we maybe have heard the story, I'm not sure we've looked at the people involved in the story. You see, when asking this question, how is it the generations work together? This story paints a picture. But when you lay all of the gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when you lay all of them on top of one another, and see how this story plays out as a whole, from all of the different perspectives, what we learn is that Jesus is teaching and he's preaching to these people. It's starting to become mealtime, and obviously they are hungry. When you're hungry and you're not at home, okay, when you're hungry, what is the natural thought process, the logical thought process? I need to find something to eat. And if you're not at home, you kind of have two options. Either I go home and get some food, or I get something in town. This is what the disciples are used to as well. And so as the people start getting hungry, they say to Jesus, hey, these people are starting to get hungry. We need to let them go into the town to get something to eat. And Jesus then asked this question, well, why don't you find something to eat? The disciples are like, wait a minute. I mean, we're told here that there's 5,000 men, and so a lot of people believe there's at least 2 to 3 times that amount of people that are there when you include women and children. And so all of these people are sitting on this hillside. The disciples look at one another and they're like, you know how much that'll cost, Jesus? Like to go into town, to go to Walmart to get bread, for everybody to get one bite, even with the rollback, it's going to be too much. You know? Like that is more than I'm going to make in a year. We can't do that. And so Jesus says, well, why don't we look around and see what you can find? And so the disciples obey. They start to look around and they find this boy. See, this is generation number 2. You see, the disciples, their generation boy. Now this young boy, it's a different generation, a different age group. And before he left that day, his mom threw a brown bag lunch at him and said, here, take this with you in case you hungry. And it has some loaves of bread that would look more like crackers to you and me, and it had a couple pieces of fish in it. And this was the meal. And so the disciples, they find this boy. And there's some sort of conversation to allow the disciples to bring this boy to Jesus with his lunch. You see, both of them play part of the story. You see, for the disciples, it requires obedience for them to listen to Jesus' instructions. For this boy, this younger generation, it requires movement. It requires movement of the boy. You see, both generations play an important part in the mission of Jesus being carried out. And now, if you're the disciples in this moment, what would have happened if you would have said, Jesus, when people are hungry, you either take them to a restaurant or they go home to eat. That's how this works. That's how we always feed people. That's how they receive a meal. If the disciples would have said, no, but we are not going to find enough food in this whole hillside. Not everyone brought a lunch, hence why they're hungry. Jesus, it is not going to work to do it that way. That's different. We've not done it that way before. We send people into town, they get their food, and then they come back. That's how we do it, Jesus. If the disciples would have refused obedience, what would have happened in the story? Jesus' mission would have still continued, but it would have been more different. Now, this little boy, if the disciples had walked up to him and said, hey, bud, what's going on? I see you at the lunch there. Why don't you come eat Jesus? Bring your lunch with you. Like most kids in that moment, what would have happened if he said, no, it's my lunch? Or, as our 1-year-old says, what would have happened if this boy would have looked at his disciples and said, I don't know you. I don't know you. This is my lunch. My mom packed it for me. This is my favorite kind of bread loaf. My dad caught this fish yesterday. This is mine. You're not having it. What would have happened? The mission of Jesus would have continued, but it would have been more difficult if the young boy was not willing to move. You see, friends, the same is true for us. The mission of Jesus will continue. He will continue to carry out his mission, but sometimes because of our lack of obedience or our lack of movement, we make it more difficult. He is still going. He is still moving. And our disobedience and our apathy is not going to stop His kingdom from advancing. But sometimes we make it more difficult when He had our plans. From the disciples, this obedience, the obedience by the disciples, the greatest enemy of obedience when it comes to the church in different generations who are working together. But one of the greatest enemies is entrenchment. In other words, I don't want to obey because I'm entrenched in the way that we do it. I'm entrenched in this is what we are used to. I'm entrenched in this is how we are supposed to do it. However, for the boy, the greatest enemy of the boy is entitlement. This is my lunch. I own it. And while it was a battle for these, it could have been a battle for these, it's still a battle for us today. We have churches that are closing around the country because people are so entrenched in how they do church. And we have churches that are refusing to grow around the country because they're filled with people that are entitled to church. Here's the thing. For the mission of Jesus to continue, it takes both obedience and movement. Where it's not entrenchment and it's not entitlement, but it is a focus. A focus on that. Focus on Jesus. There's a lot of times we talk about the church and that we are a multi-generational church. And I love that. But I think that Jesus is calling us to do a little bit more. I mean, I've got some volunteers that I need to come up on stage. Some of them know that they're coming. Some of them don't. You're not going to have to say anything if I call your name, so don't freak out. Okay, Lucian, if you want to come on up to the stage, I don't want to come. Adam, come on up to the stage. Alan, come on up. Riley, come on up. When your uncle's the preacher. Come on up, stand right here. Actually, Lucian, you want to go on that side? Stand on that side. Riley, come over on this side. Come on. When you look on the stage, okay, it's very obvious that everybody standing on stage right now are from different generations, right? Wait, that's not difficult, okay, to figure out. Riley, how old are you? Are you sure? Okay. Riley is 8. Lucian, how old are you? 73. Just about the same as Riley. Adam, our new kids minister, is now here in Macon, not living anymore. Yep. Yeah, that's right. Adam, how old are you? 34, absolutely. Ma'am? 15, you sure? Okay, great. Okay. It's obvious that each are from a different generation. Okay? Here's what I need you to do. Lucian, I need you to go stand in that corner and look at that wall. Riley, go stand back there in that corner. I'll go stand in that corner. Adam back there in the corner. And just look out. Okay? No, you don't have to get up. Just stay on the stage. There you go. Just stand right there. Look at the wall. Perfect. This right here is a representation of a multi-generational church. We are all occupying, if the stage is a room, we are all occupying the same room. We're all occupying the same space. But here's the thing, we are all looking in different directions. If I went and asked any of these individuals right now, well, what's the best way to follow Jesus? They would all have different perspectives because they're facing different directions. If I were to ask them about the best thing that they appreciate about the church and their aspect of the church, in other words, where they are looking, they would all have different answers. Because they're all facing different directions. You see, this is a picture of a multi-generational church. Not bad. It is highly valued. But here's what I think Jesus is calling us to. All right, if you guys want to come back to the center. All right, come in a little bit closer this time. I won't bite. This is a picture of an intergenerational church, where all of the generations are facing one direction. And as Jesus' people, that direction is towards Jesus. And all of us offer something different. Like if I ask Riley right now, take a step closer. If I asked Riley right now to jump off stage and run as fast as she could to those doors and come back, you'd probably be able to do that, wouldn't you? Yeah. Now, Lucian. No, probably not. Probably not. If I asked Allie, if I want to know, hey, what is high school culture like right now? She'd be able to tell me. We're not in high school. He might not know as much about high school culture. But if I wanted to know how to run a bulldozer or heavy equipment, I'm coming to ask Lucian. Because I don't have a clue. But he's got lots of years of doing it that I don't know anything about. You see, each of us brings something unique to the table with how God has gifted us and how God has wired us. And it's one thing for us to be in the same space together, but it's another thing for us to be connected and caring for one another and all focusing the same direction. You see, for the disciples and this boy, Jesus' mission happens because both of them are focused on Jesus. You guys can have a seat. Thank you. Don't jump out. You see, because here's the thing. When you look at Jesus and you look at the disciples and you look at this young boy, and then you see what unfolds after that. Well, there are thousands of people that see the power of Jesus. When these different generations, when they understand that obedience and motion are necessary to carry out the mission of Jesus. Because here's the thing. You can't focus on yourself and Jesus at the same time. You can't focus on yourself and Jesus at the same time. And it's too easy in the church, especially when it comes to different generations and different understandings, for us to become focused on us. And the problem is that when we become focused on us and our understanding of church and our way of doing church, we turn. And we lose sight of what's most important. And we begin to only look at our perspective. See, the truth of the story is this: the mission of Jesus requires a partnership of obedience and motion. The mission of Jesus requires a partnership of obedience and motion. Both of them are necessary. Both the motion of the boy to get up and bring his lunch, the obedience of the disciples to go and to find and to have everybody sit down and to serve them all food. And obedience and motion were required for the mission of Jesus to continue. And they were both required for Jesus to be made known by these thousands of people. And if you and I, if we are to live out the mission of Jesus that we've been called to live out, to go and to make disciples, it means that we obey, it means that we move, and it means that we focus our lives on Jesus. For some of us this morning, our obedience is struggling. For others of us, our motion is not happening. But some of us, we have years of experience of obeying and following Jesus and trusting in Him, and we're not sharing it with anybody. And there's some of us that we have lots of energy. We are fully able and capable of serving all over the place and using the motion of our lives to move for Jesus' sake, and we're not doing it. You see, the mission of Jesus to be carried to the world, it requires a partnership of obedience and motion. Maybe the greatest partnership of all time. But maybe the best picture to illustrate this is the partnership. This is deep, right? On peanut butter and jelly. Like, is there a more infamous partnership in all of history than peanut butter and jelly? No. No, there's not. And here's what I've learned. When it comes to peanut butter and jelly, there are a lot of different ways to do it, isn't there? It begins with your bread choice. Some of us in the room are white bread only. Some of us are wheat bread. Some of us are honey oat. Some of us are someplace in between. And then there's the question, the age-old debate that probably keeps a lot of us up at night. Is it peanut butter on one slice of bread and jelly on the other slice of bread? Or is it peanut butter and then jelly on the same slice of bread and then you put the other one on top of it? But we don't even have time to debate crunchy or creamy, right? Like, no way, we got to do lunch. We got to wrap this up. No time for crunchy or creamy debate. And then there's the question, is there crust or no crust? Well, it depends on how old. Not necessarily. There's all these different ways that you can do peanut butter and jelly. And now there's even the question, do I make my own peanut butter and jelly, or do I just buy Uncrustables? Right? Like, there's all of these different ways. But here's what it requires. It requires both peanut butter and jelly. Maybe you're saying to yourself, man, I'm not a jelly person. I cringe at jelly. When I put jelly on there, it just falls all over my shirt, squeezes outside. I don't have time for that. It's too sweet. Now, I don't understand you, but you're just a peanut butter sandwich person only. And if that's you, that's fine. Enjoy your peanut butter sandwich. But don't do this. Do not call it peanut butter and jelly. Because it's not. It's only one-sided partnership. It's just a peanut butter sandwich. And some of us will say, I do not have time to be annoyed by peanut butter. It sticks to the roof of my mouth, gets in my teeth. If I don't have a drink, it ruins half my day. Like, I don't have time for peanut butter. You put jelly on the sandwich, and a lot of sweet jelly, and it's almost homemade jelly, and I'm all about it. And we're not talking about grape or strawberry or somewhere. But we're all about the jelly. And if you're a jelly sandwich person, or jelly toast, or whatever, that's great. Enjoy the jelly. But do not call it peanut butter and jelly. Because it's not, is it? No, it's not. It's jelly, or it's peanut butter. And in order for it to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it takes a partnership of the two. It takes both of them coming together. However it is that you grew up understanding that they're supposed to come together, it takes peanut butter and jelly in order to make peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The greatest partnership of all time in history. Well, what's the goal at the end of peanut butter and jelly? To eat. Right? That you're to have a meal. Some of us might take a couple. But you're to have a meal, that you're to have something to eat. You're to have something to fill you up. You're to have something to make you feel better. You're to have something that sustains you and keeps you going. You see, this partnership, really the goal is that it will continue to give you life. The same is true for us in the church. Is that when it comes to us living as Jesus people, it requires generations partnering together to bring the mission of Jesus to the world. It takes a partnership of motion and obedience to bring the hope and the grace and the joy of Jesus to a broken and hopeless and empty world. It takes us moving and obeying and all of us focusing on Jesus together. To partner together. But recognizing that it's not about me, it's about Him. And so I will come together and I will partner. I will partner my emotion and my willingness to give up what I have, and I will partner my obedience to go where He calls me to go. Because the mission of my life is the mission of Jesus. To go and make disciples. And I will obey. And I will move. Because my life is fixed on Jesus. And our life as the church, from all different generations, should all be focused on Jesus. Because that's what sets us apart. So maybe the question is of all questions that we can ask, it may be one of the simplest but yet most important questions for us putting up with one another is, are we focused on Jesus? my life focused on Jesus? Is the motion, is the action, is the service of my life, is it focused on Jesus? Or if I made it about me, is my worship focused on Jesus? Or if I made it about me, is my giving focused on Jesus? Or if I made it about me? You see, the mission of Jesus, it requires a partnership of obedience and devotion. This morning, are we willing to move focused on Jesus from all different ages? Are we willing to obey focused on Jesus from all different ages? Because if we're going to carry the hope of Jesus to the world, it requires that we choose Jesus in everything that we do. If we're to be the church that's living on mission, it requires us to obey and to move focused. Let's go ahead and stand. We're going to spend some time in worship. A time of reflection, a time of evaluating it, a time just to look, where is my life focused? For some of us in our lives, in the obedience of trusting Jesus and following after what His Word says, right now is off someplace and it's leaving us feeling empty. And for some of us, we've got we're always on the go. We're rarely focused on Jesus when we move. And we're doing lots of things, but not much for His kingdom. And maybe this morning the question that we ask of ourselves is, Jesus, am I focused on you? As a senior adult, am I focused on you with what I have to give? As a teenager, am I focused on you with what I have to give? As a 20-something-year-old, learning what life is about to unfold and look like, am I focused on you? As an empty nester, learning what it's like to live in the quiet again, am I focused on you as a college student, as an elementary student? Am I focused on you? But everything else is going on. To live on mission. To the work that You have called us to live as the church. As a church, if we are to bring hope to the world, if we're to bring the message of grace to the world, it requires obedience and movement focused on Jesus. Let's sing.